This is the secret that America's allies will never admit publicly. While Washington burns through political chaos and economic crisis, foreign governments are quietly implementing an emergency intervention to keep American society functioning. Canadian healthcare systems treat American patients through medical tourism that are actually cross-border rescue operations. European banks stabilize American markets through shadow financial networks. Japanese logistics companies ensure American supply chains don't collapse. The world's democracies have placed America under intensive care while pretending it is still healthy enough to lead the free world. This isn't charity. This is survival. When the global superpower fails, shockwaves destabilize currencies, crash markets, and create power vacuums hostile nations eagerly fill. America's allies aren't saving America out of friendship, they are preventing economic apocalypse and geopolitical chaos. The intervention began 18 months ago at the Bank for International Settlements in Basel. Central bankers from G20 nations gathered for what appeared to be routine monetary policy coordination. But the classified discussion involved economic data showing systemic American collapse, not recession, but total breakdown. Critical infrastructure failing, supply chains breaking, financial markets destabilizing beyond any historical precedent. The intelligence was stark and undeniable. American port efficiency had dropped 40% due to labor disputes and equipment failures. Power grid reliability was declining monthly as maintenance budgets disappeared into political fighting. Healthcare capacity was contracting as medical professionals fled to stable countries. The mathematical models painted a picture of cascading system failures that would accelerate exponentially once they reached critical mass. Mathematical models were clear. American economic death spiral within 24 months, taking the global economy down. But the data revealed something more terrifying than economic collapse: social breakdown. American cities were showing early indicators of institutional failure similar to those seen in failed states. Police departments losing personnel faster than they could recruit. Fire departments operating with skeleton crews. School systems closing due to teacher shortages. The infrastructure of civil society was quietly disintegrating while political attention focused on partisan battles. The central bankers made an unprecedented decision: intervene to stabilize America without America's knowledge through private sector networks. The operation was codenamed Project Lighthouse, keeping the beacon of democracy illuminated while secretly powering the generators that made the light possible. The first phase was financial stabilization through instruments so sophisticated that even American financial regulators couldn't detect them. European banks purchased American corporate debt above market rates to prevent defaults, but structured the transactions as routine portfolio diversification rather than emergency intervention. Japanese pension funds bought American municipal bonds to prevent local bankruptcies, routing the purchases through third-party investment vehicles that obscured their origin and purpose. Canadian investment firms propped up real estate markets to prevent housing collapses, but did so through complex derivative instruments that appeared to be normal hedging activities. Swiss banks provided emergency liquidity to American financial institutions during stress periods, disguising the assistance as standard interbank lending facilities. The intervention created an invisible safety net beneath the American financial system, one that activated automatically during crisis moments but remained completely hidden during normal operations. None appeared in official transactions, it flowed through private networks disguised as normal market activity. The intervention was so seamlessly integrated into regular financial flows that American Treasury officials analyzing market data saw only typical international investment patterns, never suspecting that foreign governments were systematically propping up American financial stability. But financial stabilization was only the beginning. As American institutions continued to deteriorate, the intervention expanded into direct service provision. Canadian healthcare workers crossed borders for education exchanges, actually staffing American hospitals facing critical shortages. Detroit's main trauma center stayed operational only because Ontario secretly paid Canadian nurses who worked 12-hour shifts while maintaining their Canadian employment status. Buffalo's cardiac unit functioned because Canadian doctors rotated through on emergency medical missions disguised as professional development opportunities. The Windsor-Detroit Medical Corridor became an integrated healthcare system with Canadian personnel seamlessly filling American staffing gaps. European financial experts took consulting positions, preventing market crashes through sophisticated intervention. German quantitative analysts kept New York trading floors operational when algorithmic trading systems failed during market volatility spikes. French derivatives experts prevented Chicago commodity market breakdown during agricultural crisis periods through knowledge-sharing initiatives that were actually emergency market stabilization operations. London-based European financial engineers worked inside American investment banks, quietly redesigning risk management systems to prevent institutional collapses. Japanese logistics specialists rebuilt broken distribution networks under process optimization cover that revolutionized American supply chain management. West Coast ports stayed functional because Japanese experts redesigned workflows, introduced efficiency technologies, and implemented management practices that American port authorities had failed to develop. Trucking companies survived fuel cost spikes through Japanese emergency routing systems that optimized delivery networks in real time. The Trans-Pacific supply chain became Japanese-managed infrastructure disguised as American logistics capabilities. Australian cybersecurity firms maintained digital infrastructure American companies could end secure after losing technical expertise to international brain drain. Power grids stayed protected from cyber attacks through Australian security contractors who embedded themselves in utility company operations centers. Financial networks continued operating because Australian engineers maintained software architecture that American programmers no longer understood, working as technical consultants whose real job was preventing digital infrastructure collapse. The intervention extended beyond economics into life-sustaining services. European universities offered exchange programs preserving educational capacity. MIT students completed engineering degrees at Cambridge while remaining officially enrolled in Boston. Canadian medical facilities accepted American patients whose treatments were interrupted by insurance disputes. Toronto hospitals treated American cancer patients. Vancouver performed emergency surgeries for Americans whose hospitals lacked qualified surgeons. European pharmaceutical companies provided medications through compassionate use programs, bypassing American bureaucratic delays. Swiss companies supplied insulin during coverage disputes. German firms provided cancer treatments when chemotherapy was interrupted by pricing fights. The psychological impact was crucial and carefully managed. Despite political chaos, Americans noticed their daily lives remained stable: lights on, internet working, shelves stocked. This created dangerous cognitive dissonance between visible dysfunction and invisible foreign life support. Americans began to develop a false sense of systemic resilience, believing their institutions were more robust than they actually were because foreign intervention masked the symptoms of institutional failure. The intervention created what psychologists call learned helplessness at a national level. Americans stopped demanding better governance because the consequences of bad governance mysteriously never materialized in their daily lives. Political dysfunction continued to escalate because voters never experienced the real-world consequences that should have created pressure for reform. Foreign assistance created a buffer between political failure and social consequences, allowing American democracy to rot from within while appearing outwardly functional. But masking symptoms isn't curing disease. America lost self-governance capacity while becoming dependent on foreign assistance that operated like a national life support system. The intervention that began as emergency care became permanent infrastructure requiring exponentially more resources monthly. Canadian healthcare workers burn out from double duty managing both Canadian and American patient loads. European banks stretch balance sheets supporting American markets while managing their own economic challenges. Japanese experts work around the clock preventing supply chain collapses while maintaining Japan's own industrial competitiveness. Remove the foreign support, and America collapses instantly. Remove Canadian medical staff, hospitals close. Remove European financial expertise, markets crash. Remove Japanese logistics management, distribution networks fail. The United States has become a failed state that functions only because foreign governments prevent its failure from becoming visible to its own citizens. But palliative care creates its own problems. The patient becomes dependent on the care providers. The care providers become responsible for the patient's survival. And eventually, the care providers have to decide whether to continue the intervention indefinitely or allow the natural process of decline to proceed. America's allies are approaching that decision point. The intervention that began as emergency life support has become permanent dependency. American society now requires foreign assistance to function normally. American institutions rely on foreign expertise to operate effectively. American markets depend on foreign investment to remain stable. America has become a client state subsidized by smaller nations. The superpower projects military force while being economically sustained by countries it claims to protect, forces deployed to defend allies who secretly prevent American collapse. The intervention becomes harder to hide. Some politicians suspect foreign assistance maintains stability, but investigating requires institutional capacity America lost. Allies face impossible choices: continue assistance and risk discovery triggering nationalist backlash, or discontinue and watch collapse. There's no good option, only manage decline versus uncontrolled implosion. Allies prepare for both scenarios while hoping neither becomes necessary. Emergency contingency plans exist for a world without American leadership, including alternative military alliance structures, replacement financial architectures, and backup technological development networks. But these plans represent the dismantling of the international order that has maintained global stability since World War II. The intervention has normalized in allied policy circles with bureaucratic efficiency that would be admirable if it weren't so terrifying. Canadian cabinet meetings now routinely include discussions about American assistance operations alongside domestic healthcare and education budgets. European central bank meetings factor American stability requirements into monetary policy decisions affecting hundreds of millions of European citizens. Japanese industrial planning incorporates American infrastructure support as permanent budget line items, treating the maintenance of American society as a cost of doing business in the global economy. A shadow international order now exists where allies quietly govern essential American functions while America maintains theatrical self-governance that convinces no one except Americans themselves. International diplomatic conferences now include sidebar discussions about American management that treat the United States as a client state requiring supervision rather than a partner capable of reciprocal cooperation. Foreign intelligence services coordinate more effectively with each other than with American intelligence agencies because they view American institutional capacity as compromised beyond repair. Americans live unaware their society requires foreign life support, seeing dysfunction on news but not experiencing consequences because foreign experts prevent breakdown before it becomes visible. They vote in elections that matter less each year because real governance decisions are made in Ottawa, Brussels, Tokyo, and Canberra by leaders who have concluded that American democracy is too dangerous to be allowed to function without adult supervision. The intervention continues because alternatives are catastrophic, but it's becoming the problem it was designed to solve, preventing collapse while preventing recovery. The patient is stable but not healing. The doctors are running out of treatments that work. The secret allies won't admit they are not sure if they are saving America or postponing its funeral while preparing for life without it. The intervention that began as emergency care has become hospice care. And hospice care, no matter how compassionate, only has one possible outcome. The intervention has become occupation disguised as assistance, and the occupied nation doesn't know it's being occupied.